pay for 20 hours of work, get 20 hours of work. This happened last year and I've been waiting months to share the inevitable fallout. So please enjoy this lengthy tale of corporate stupidity. I'll begin by saying I work for a software company. I was working on a project for a client to customize part of the software and stuff. The project was very open-ended, mostly because the client kept changing their mind about what they wanted. So the contract was time and materials, meaning that I had an hourly rate. I would log all the time worked on the project in half-hour intervals, and every week my company would bill the client company for the hours spent on the project. The client said they didn't care how much effort it took. They wanted a good product and they wanted it before the end of the year, so they could present it at their big internal meeting. At the beginning, the project went great. Every week I had a meeting with the client and I would get feedback on the progress, as well as new requests they might have. And then I'd spend however long it took to implement the changes. I'd bill them 15 hours, 20 hours, 25 hours, or however many it had been. Slowly, over time, the client started requesting more and more. I told them during the meeting, this feature will require X days of work. Changing that will require Y more days, and so on. But again the client insisted they needed all those extra features. They also complained that the project wasn't advancing quickly enough, and insisted they needed the project completed before the end of the year. I talked to my manager and explained the situation. To be able to finish quickly enough, I needed to work full-time on this project. My manager moved my other projects to different people, and we told the client that until the end of the year I would work full-time on the project to ensure we will hit all the deadlines. The client was overjoyed. For about a month. The following month, the client is pissed and is demanding to know why we're charging them so much. I pull out my timesheets and explain that, as agreed, I've been working full-time and more on their project. Every week I've logged between 45 and 50 hours of work, and I have detailed notes specifying exactly how I've spent that time. I'm not particularly concerned about being accused of stealing time, because I'm a fast worker and most tasks have been completed more quickly than the original estimates. Besides, I point out that I'm now working twice as many hours as before, so it's costing the client twice as much per week. But I'm also completing tasks twice as quickly and will be finished in half the time. The client, unfortunately, doesn't appreciate my use of logical reasoning. They accuse my company of taking advantage and they say that starting from next week they no longer want to pay for more than 20 hours of work per week. I tell them, sure, we can do that, but it's October already and you want the project completed by the end of the year. Given the amount of work still left to do, I will need more hours to finish. The client doesn't let me explain and says that we're not to bill them for anything more than 20 hours per week. They will not pay us for more than 20 hours per week. And they want this in writing or they'll cancel the entire project. And my manager says, of course, the customer is always right. This was an evil act of malicious compliance. So please read until the end before getting angry at my manager. He's a great guy. So my manager sends the client an email confirming that, starting from date, my engagement with them will be capped at a maximum of 20 hours per week. He also attaches a spreadsheet of the estimated time to develop all the new features of the project, how many hours I'd spent so far, and how many hours I projected to spend to complete it. The client smugly acknowledges this. Before the end of the week, my manager gives me back my other project, as well as a new one. You see, at the time we were understaffed because we were growing too quickly, and we were getting more requests for new projects that we could handle. So there would have been no point in stealing hours from this client and pissing them off. when we can take on a couple of new clients instead and bill everyone for the actual work and keep everyone happy. So, starting from next week, my new schedule is 20 hours with pissy client, 10 hours with client B and 15 hours with client C. It works great for me. It doesn't work that great for pissy client. At our next weekly meeting, one of the features they requested isn't ready yet. At the following meeting, I tell them we'll need to move the deadline for the next milestone by 2 weeks. Then it's the beginning of December, and they ask me if I would be able to make some last-minute changes and still deliver the project by the end of the year. And I say, oh, there is no way the project can be finished by the end of the year. We have yet another meeting with the client and my manager. My manager asks me why I'm missing this huge deadline. I say, do you remember when I was talking about all the work that still needed to be done and how long it would take? In October we estimated the project needed another 60 days of work. I worked 10 days in October and 10 days in November. Because you said 20 hours max per week. It's going to take about 40 more days of work to finish the project. It's December. Even if I work overtime, there are not 40 days left before the end of the year. Manager is like, yep, makes perfect sense. Client does the shocked Pikachu face. They act like this is the first they've heard about not being able to meet the deadlines, even though I've been telling them for weeks. Unfortunately, they are the kind of person who never listens to what they don't want to hear. At first they wanted the work done quickly, so they didn't think that if I worked more hours I would bill them for more hours. Then they wanted to be billed for fewer hours, so they didn't consider that I would work fewer hours on the project and things would get done much more slowly. Unfortunately for the client, who would like to pretend that we were springing this on them at the last minute? We had tons of emails to show we had told them well in advance. My manager's email back in October had even included an estimate of when the project would be completed based on number of hours worked per week. Our ass was well and truly covered. Now, as for the fallback, the client kicked and screamed and demanded that I go back to work on their project full-time, or even that my company should provide a second person to help me meet the deadline at the end of the year. It's January and the project is still unfinished, so you can guess how well that went. Client had to move the big presentation of the new software and was not happy about it, and about having to explain it all to their own CEO. But we told them very nicely in corporate tones to pound sand. I was already scheduled to work on 2 other projects for the next few months, and it had been hard enough to put me full-time on this project the first time. My manager is not going to leave another 2 clients hanging, especially not to please this pissy client who keeps changing their mind and threatens to cancel their contract every other week. As a company we do our best to keep the client happy, but there is a limit to everything, especially when someone goes out of their way to not listen when we try to explain how cause and effect works. TLDR. Client demands I work more slowly. I work more slowly. The work is not completed by the time client needed it, and client is upset. But I don't care because I get paid anyway. I love the stories when a manager actually backs up their people. And that's why change orders protect both parties. It shows a clear, mutual understanding. I love it when straightforward compliance becomes malicious. I'm relatively new in my current role in a niche research department at a university. I have recently come to understand that department leadership is of the same mindset as pissy client, and I'm trying to figure out how to get stuff done efficiently and well despite this. I love stories like this even though they throw me into a pit of despair. Takeaway? Document the hell out of everything. I want to believe that the next time this client contracts work, They will take into consideration the expertise of the person they are hiring and believe them when they give them a timeline and detail the necessary amount of work that needs to be done. I really want to, but I don't. Show by documentation. Put it down in writing and give it to the client and/or regulator. This is the single most important thing that I learned while working in engineering, construction, services and consulting. Put it on paper and share it with everyone so no one can pretend they weren't told. Because if you don't, they will claim they were not told. And that will not work out well for you if you don't have proof that you did. I've seen this a lot, but on a larger scale. With a military client, the contract would be on a cost-plus basis and the client would keep adding stuff at almost every meeting. Sometimes it was our fault, because we would show them some new sexy tech or gizmo and they would immediately want that too. A 5-year contract would be heading for 10 years and way over budget. It's why all this defense stuff is so expensive. When the government concerned got bored with this, they introduced fixed price contracts. One of our competitors took requirements from the client, told them it would not work but started work. The client kept trying to introduce changes but the supplier refused them all. Referencing the fixed price contract, they delivered exactly what had been contracted and it didn't work, as the supplier had stated at the outset. They then had the balls to tell the client to give them a new contract to fix it, which was duly awarded. There's cheap, fast, or good. You can only have 2 out of the 3. That's the basis of any project. But boy, it is hard to make the client understand it. Sounds like pissy clients' delusion of grandeur led them to believe that they themselves were your company's only important client, and that your company would donate any and all extra hours, efforts simply for the prestige. I see this way too often nowadays in the corporate world, out of touch. Upper management, decision makers not being managed, kept in check by their own leaders, culminating in catastrophic failures. This was an evil act of malicious compliance. So please read until the end before getting angry at my manager. He's a great guy. Guaranteed nobody was angry at your manager at this point. I have a similar one I saw firsthand. Sales meeting. The new revenue generators for the next fiscal year are presented. Sales manager. Quote, We're especially looking forward to releasing project. Feel free to choose your own name, which will be released in Q2 and will be a solid revenue generator for the rest of the year. Software engineer raises hand. No, it won't. SM. Excuse me. What? Quote, SE. You're not going to release project, whatever you named it, in Q2. SM. Well, why not? Quote, SE. I'm working on that. That's my project. SM. So. Quote, SE. I'm the only one working on that. I'm the guy. I'm it. Ask my manager. He's right there. Manager nods agreement. SE. So. It's not going to be ready in Q2. It's not even going to be ready in Q3. If all goes well and I don't hit any major roadblocks, I'm looking at another 12 months to get it done. SM. Wheel. Why don't we take this offline? Voiceover. The product wasn't released until the next fiscal year. True story. I salute you and your manager. This is a thing of beauty. I'd say this is peak malicious compliance. You did exactly what the client demanded, knowing they would not like the result. There is no chance that they cancel the contract, because if they do, they have to find a new developer who then will take time to understand the project and the current state of development. That is why the contract says that start is subject to a completed and signed statement of work. Then every request to make a change is responded to with, that is outside the scope of the project. Do you want to discuss a change order to get costs and completion delay, or wait until the project is done and then handle that separately? Quote, nothing starts without the SOW reviewed and signed by the customer with all the projected dates and requirements of who does what. A tale as old as time. Client, I want this. Builder, sure, it'll take X time and Y dollar reduce. Client, KTHX. Client, hey, we also want all these other things. Builder, it'll take X extra time and Y extra monies. Client, now I am angry at you. Boss builder, sorry. Let me smooch your starfish and we'll do it all within the original time and shekels. Because the customer is always right. Builder, updates resume. A client to avoid in the future. Labor charging is no joke. I think a lot of people view it mostly as a way to keep employees accountable or as some kind of clocking in. But most companies are very serious about accurate timecard reporting, specifically because that's the customer's receipt for services rendered. In industries like software, human time that was spent solving a problem is the product you're buying. And you want proof that you got the amount of hours you paid for. There will be no fudging of numbers for convenience's sake if you want anyone to ever trust your prices. It sounds to me like they just had this unspoken assumption that they'd pay for 20 hours but you'd work more than that. They asked for hours. But really they wanted the same work at a discount. Smart of your manager to not cave. With this kind of customer, the next chapter would have been, we're not happy with minor imsginnery, unspecified issue, so we're not paying. Some people seem to think that being totally unrealistic about timelines is good management. I had a job in purchasing. I came on board in the middle of the project, after complicated technical thing had been ordered already. I don't know what the subcontractor told the company at the time the order was placed. But by the time I was involved, the complicated technical thing was very late and was holding up the project. I was put in charge of talking to the subcontractor. I get pulled into a meeting. Everyone's freaking out about the project being late. Manager says that the complicated technical thing absolutely has to be here by a certain date, and asks when I can confirm that. I tell everyone that it will definitely not meet that date. Everyone stares daggers at me. My supervisor tells me that I'm not being positive and I need to try harder. I calmly reply that I've been talking to the subcontractor all week. I'm very aware of their situation, and I'm 100% sure nothing is going to budge. We need to plan for complicated technical thing being even later than our worst case scenario. Because they've been paying me to work on this and this is what I've learned. The outcome was that I got yelled at after the meeting. The thing arrived super late and was wrong. And eventually they trumped up complaints about Mr. and fired me. The classic engineering triangle. You have money, time, and quality. There is no feasible way to have all three at the same time. So one is always affected when the other two are benefited.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.